Thank you for joining us and welcome to Business Morning. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago. Well, the House of Representatives says it will investigate the illegal and excessive charges imposed on account holders by commercial banks. The House has asked the Committee on Banking to liaise with professional financial consultants to investigate and determine the extent of excess charges on the House of Representatives and other public institutions and individuals' accounts held in various banks to determine the extent of excess charges, if any, in the last 8 years. The committee mandate is to report back to the House with recommendations within 4 weeks for further legislative actions. According to the lawmakers, the banking industry is supposed to be a catalyst for economic growth and wealth creation. An approval has been given by the Federal Executive Council for the award of 2 roads contracts linking Nigeria's borders with the Republic of Niger, totaling 29.2 billion naira. One of the roads, Kuraya-Bubara Niger Republic border, is in the sum of 19.7 billion naira and passes through Jigawa State. The second road, Bale-Kordela Niger Republic border, is through Sokoto State and terminates at the country's border with Niger. The sum of 9.5 billion naira was approved for the road. On speaking to State House correspondents after the meeting, the Minister of Works Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, said the roads would promote business across the borders. He also said the roads would position Nigeria for effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. And to the markets now, bearish sentiment was sustained at the equities market on Wednesday, and that saw the index down 0.22% on the day. No thanks to MTN and ETI. Right, Temple?
Correct, Chimeze. That was one of the major contributors to the losses that we saw in the markets midweek, which is down some 0.22%, as you alluded, which is also higher than the level of loss that we saw in the preceding trading session, where we were down some 0.03%. So basically, this is the 4th consecutive session of losses, if you add up to the loss that we had on Friday. And we had a negative market breadth. We saw some 16 losers against some just 11 gainers in the market. You talked about ETI experiencing some loss. That was a dip of some 3.85%. And of course, that's due to the court case or a tax appeal, the result of the tax appeal that they had at the tribunal against the Federal Inland Revenue Service, where they were then fined some 1.6 billion naira. That was as a result of the case taken by ETI, Ecobank Transnational Incorporated, to the court regarding the 2016 earnings, the financial statements, where they had a tussle over how much has to be paid by way of tax to FIRS. So that fine of 1.6 billion naira is basically what investors quickly reacted to yesterday. As for MTN, which is another company that some investors also reacted to, that was down by 3.45% yesterday. We got investors reacting to the news that House of Reps members are asking for details of the taxes, withholding tax that they had actually collected on behalf of the federal government, which is now meant to be remitted to the coffers or to the accounts of the FIRS. So basically, these 2 key stocks that investors reacted to yesterday impacted on the market. Also coupled with the fact that we haven't really seen so much of good macroeconomic status in recent time, because again, we have coronavirus, which is also rattling the global investment community. But basically, we got a benchmark key benchmark indices down to 26,000 psychological position yesterday. We have our equity capitalization retained at 14.05 trillion naira. And of course, I told you earlier we had a few gainers and of course more losers. Vitafoam was the major loser yesterday in the market. And of course, that's traded. The trading actually occurred on the offer side of this particular company, bringing its lost date position to 13.62%. And that's what we have right now. Honeywell Flour made some gains yesterday. Was the top gainer in the market. But again, that's because we got a bit of buy sentiment on that particular company. UBA, in spite of being on the beat cart yesterday, it didn't actually really move on up as much. But then we have Honeywell flour, which is on the consumer side of the consumer goods side of the market, getting all of those numbers. But then, as I said, UBA was on the beat cast. It actually gained some 4.38% yesterday, had some 81 million units of its shares traded for a total value of 549 million naira yesterday in the markets. But then this, if you look at the activity level of the market, was still weak. We're down some 6% yesterday. Value of the entire transactions that we had yesterday in terms of activity level was down by some 23% as well. And if you look at the deals compared to what we did on Tuesday, we did just 3,831 yesterday compared to 4,000 plus that we did on Tuesday. For the sectoral performance of the market, we got the banking side of the market experiencing some good gains yesterday, was up sectorally by some 0.38%, 38 basis points. That's as a result of the buy interest that we saw on FCMB, the UBA, Fidelity Bank, Guarantee Trust Bank, and a couple of other banks. Jaiz Bank also did some goods because this is earnings season. And as an investor, smart as you may be expecting some kind of earnings, positive earnings to be declared across these counters very soon. So folks are taking position in this major companies. Ditto for the NSE consumer goods segment of the market, which was marginally up yesterday. We saw increase in Honeywell flour, and that impacted that sector marginally as well. Industrial goods side of the markets too, folks are beginning to check that space as well. BUS Cement, or BUA Cement, is a major stock to actually watch. That was one of the key segments of the market that actually contributed to the rise that we saw yesterday by 1.95%. If you look at the insurance space, we didn't see a good performance there yesterday. Again, it was down 114 basis points due to the sell-off that we saw on Consolidated Hallmark Insurance PLC by about 10% yesterday. Lasaco Insurance did some good, up some 4% plus. That was not enough to actually change the profit margin on that side of the market. Oil and gas continues to experience a flat performance. This taking us to the energy stocks of the market. We didn't see no change again for yesterday. All the numbers remained flat, no movement on corn oil, Adova PLC, which is former Forte Oil, no movements, 11 PLC, no movements, MRS, O&O, Seplat, in spite of the fact that some analysts are changing their perception and, of course, they about this particular company saying that it now has an upside price of some 800 and something naira, 830 something naira in view. That hasn't changed in recent time. It remains at 605 naira per stock. Per share as we speak. Total, Eternal Oil, Global Spectrum, Japol, Capital Oil, RAC Unity, no movement in the prices. Quickly to the NASD OTC market, which is where we have the unlisted stocks there. Of course, market capitalization was at 503 billion, no movements in the performance in the key benchmark indices, which is the listed securities index on that side. But if you check the volume, in spite of the fact that we didn't have any movement, any percentage movement in the indices, we had some cool volume yesterday, a whopping 1.6 million units of shares traded in total, and we had that valued at almost 400 million naira, specifically 392 million naira, and of course 23 deals as opposed to just 3 deals which we had in the preceding trading session. What exactly is going on in this space as well? It is investors taking position ahead of the earnings season because, again, any moment from now, some of the key stocks that you have available on that space will begin to release their numbers. So if you check yesterday, out of the 6 to 7 numbers of stocks that traded on that platform yesterday, Afriland didn't change in price. Allianz Insurance, which is a major stock in that space, opened at 1 naira 19 kobo and closed at same price. But we saw some trades on it, 11 trades specifically on Allianz Insurance. That's some 60,600 units of its shares bought by some investors yesterday. But that didn't change the value, the price value. Another stock to watch in that space is the NDEP, that's Niger Delta Exploration Production Company, which had a whopping 1.3 million units of its shares traded yesterday. We saw 4 trades there, and the price, which opened at 323 naira 11 kobo, remained intact all through the session. Let's do a bit of the fixed income side of the market. Of course, we know that we'll be getting some more of this much later from the experts there. But by reporting, we know that the bond side of the market had its yields dip in some 1 basis point across the benchmark curve. There was a bit of quiet trading performance on that side of the market yesterday. We saw investors checking the 2049 security. We saw some interest across the 2028 to 2029 papers as well as investors continue to struggle to invest the maturities anticipated today, across that segment of the markets. Treasury bill side of things, we saw yields compressing by an average of 5 basis points across the benchmark OMO, that's the open market operations curve. We know that there's a bit of buy pressure spilling across that end as well. Demand mostly was at the longer end of the curve. The likes of 5th of January and 16th of February were the ones that investors were checking. And of course, the almost side of things, yesterday we saw pocket-sized demand, basically, because again, yields are compressed by some 20 basis points across the that side of the market. Again, we know that the PMA auction that held yesterday, where stock rates actually came lower, is something that actually propelled investors to also look at that side of the market. And from the stock market, we'll move on to the commodity side of the market. And we've got Anosike here from FDC, Financial Derivatives Company. Thanks a great deal for joining us this morning on the show. Yeah, so we've got the burning issues right now. I'm sure you have them weighing on your radar. Would you let us into what we have as part of the burning issues today?
Obviously, number one thing on everyone's lips is coronavirus and how it's affected not just oil prices, but commodities in general. Oil being Nigeria's biggest export, it affects our revenues, our foreign exchange earnings. It plunged to just above $52 early this morning. Basically, the supply chains in the world now are global. And China being the epicenter of the virus itself. China is, for a long time, has been the world's manufacturing base, if you like. So almost every major companies around the world are somehow linked to China. Some of their inputs and what you have it. So if you have a slower output from China, it may affect companies all around the world. There's a lower demand for crude oil, and the outlook is looking grimmer.
Which is why our crude oil price is now at
$52 a barrel. So the sentiments are dampened. There's also, OPEC is trying to do what it can to boost prices. There's a seeming reluctance on the part of Russia, because they came together to form OPEC Plus. Russia is seemingly reluctant to cut its outputs, even among the OPEC members. It's just Saudi Arabia and the UAE who seem like they have the will to cut, but come together. Look, the only thing we can do at the moment, if you want oil prices to be above 60, Nigeria's benchmark oil price is 57. So we need to do what we can, even if we cannot. Technically, I don't think we can afford even more cuts, because for quite some time over the course of 2019, Nigeria was cheating on its quota. We were producing above 1.7. Our quota is about 1.78. Therefore, we did at some point we're doing above 2 million. So that's a major worry.
So let me just quickly chip in here. I know that at some point you probably, or your colleagues might have explained that on this show at some point, but specifically, how is this affecting us locally right now? I mean, the crude oil price, our benchmark, you entered the levels at $57 per barrel, and we're now doing $52 per barrel. Does that impact on our revenues?
Obviously, it affects our revenues. More importantly, at the moment, it affects on foreign exchange earnings. Reserves have been on the downward trend since.
Because again, if you look at FX right now, it's shot up again. I think it's $365.
$365 on the IFX window. IFX window is a bit more reflective of market reality. That's where most of the transactions take place. The parallel market is stuck at 360. I don't know how or why. But if you're looking at the IFX window, there's increased pressure on the exchange rate, and it's been at 365, 364 the past couple of days. So I mean, if that continues, trend continues, going up to 366. 367, all eyes will be on the CBN and say, look, we know oil prices are falling. We know that you have continued to intervene in this market, but how much longer can this go on for? Oil forex earnings are falling. So
as part of your burning economic issues, you've also got the telco subscribers up to some 6.9%, up by some 6.9% to 185 million in 2019. That's the latest report, right?
Yes. That number feeds in crucially to the federal government's broadband penetration plan. Basically, there's a plan to have close to 70% of Nigerians have internet connectivity by 2025. Obviously, you need to have have a phone or SIM card for most people, especially in the rural areas, to have that connectivity. And in an increasingly digitalized world, everyone access to education, access more importantly to financial
digital space,
financial.
But is this in proportion with the growth we are in broadband penetration?
This is growing faster
than broadband penetration. That's the concern.
One individual could own 2, 3, multiple phones and SIM cards.
Connected to one source of data.
At the end of the day.
Okay, I know we really don't have so much time, but we've got Gary at 1 year high of 8,900, sugar price up, external reserves. All of these are part of the burning economic issues, and of course, diesel price is now at 210 naira per liter. What is pushing up that price?
210. It's actually on the downward trend. Last month it was about 215.
It's down.
It's down, but we expect it to rise in the coming weeks. Everyone's been complaining of the heat.
Because that's one analysis I know.
Yeah, everyone's complaining of the heat, and then there's been a drop in power supply, even if the numbers tell us otherwise. So we expect people to have increased demand for diesel to run their generators, to sleep more comfortably at night, even in their offices.
So part of what we should be celebrating is the goodies. Food prices are relatively flat at this point in time, but the coronavirus deaths all in China as well. Okay, that's something to actually...
Yes, I mean, that's the epicenter. China has given us a blueprint on how to contain the disease, so the rest of the world can follow suit.
So power sector, what do we get?
Like I said, the numbers tell us that there's been an increase in output on the 25th. That's okay. At the moment, we have no water constraints.
I know numbers don't lie, but the reality of this
is that people are complaining of lack of power and increased heat.
Exactly.
So they say there's no constraint, there's no water constraint, so to speak. The grid constraint fell. That's why power output is up. Yeah, and the issue is always still transmission.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, as soon as we sort that out, maybe...
Let's do a bit of the commodity in focus. Sorghum, something that we use for barley, for ethanol, and of course, the breweries are supposed to be using that. What do we have in that segment?
It's a commodity that Nigeria has a relative comparative advantage in. It's the second largest producer in the world. It produces just about 7 million metric tons, and it has the potential to do 12, 13. So almost double what it's currently doing. It's a commodity. The local price in dollar terms is about $416, but the international price is over $900. So that's, there's a current over 100% premium, so to speak. If you can manage to produce enough and sell internationally, you can make over 100%. So that's a boon for exporters. It's something that's used by the breweries, even malt makers, livestock feed for guys who rear animals. It's something that can grow even when in areas of drought. In northern Nigeria, it's conducive for growth, but it's almost, they call it a miracle crop.
So ironically, the numbers of these companies that you're tracking, we've got Nigerian breweries, we've got Guinness playing out here. These numbers are not so impressive, except for the decent Q4 that we had for Nigerian breweries also. That you mentioned livestock feeds. How come these are not positive enough for their numbers?
Because obviously they have other costs to worry about. There's the cost of running your business. That's just one of the costs. It's cost of powering your business, cost of logistics, cost of infrastructure. Those constraints are that we've always talked about, the constraints to GDP growth. So as soon as you sort out these constraints, then businesses can boom. Not just these ones that we talked about, businesses in general. For the livestock feed, or even the brewery, those guys have other costs. Cost of the.
So in wrapping up, outlook for commodity prices. I'll give you 10 seconds with this.
Okay, for domestic commodity prices, the border closure the effect of the border closure is still causing some prices to rise. But as there was also the increased demand over the festive period, but that has waned, and so that lower demand is taking some pressure on prices, and we'll see some prices falling before we get into the planting season that starts just after Easter.
Thanks a great deal for your insight and shared here. I appreciate this analysis. Thank you so much.